My name is Evelyn Harris, and I'm 74 years old. I live in a quiet part of Cincinnati now, not far from the river, where the breeze still reminds me that life, no matter how rough, always moves forward. I've thought long and hard about whether to share my story publicly, and after years of silence, I've decided it's time. This is the first time I'm telling it all. No edits, no softening. It's not easy for me to open up like this, but something in me says someone out there might need to hear it. Maybe you're feeling stuck, scared, or like there's no way forward. If you are, I want you to know you're not alone. I've been there, and what I've lived through would have broken a lot of people. But I didn't stay broken. And I hope that by telling this story, you'll see that even when life throws you into darkness, there's still a way out. It won't be a pretty story all the way through. There are parts that still sting to remember, but it's real, and I believe there's strength in truth. So if you've got a little time and an open heart, I'd like to take you back to where it all began. Not for sympathy, but because sometimes the act of listening can be as healing as the act of telling. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see a little bit of yourself in me. I grew up in a little house tucked between cornfields and hills in rural Kentucky. The kind of place where you knew the sound of every neighbor's car and the creak of your own front steps. My parents, Ruth and Thomas, didn't have much, but they had each other, and somehow that always felt like more than enough. My daddy worked from sunup to sundown, fixing tractors and baling hay. He'd come home with dirt under his nails and a tired smile on his face. My mama, quiet and strong, ran the home like it was a sanctuary, always smelling of warm bread and lavender from the garden. Our house was nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a creaky back porch, and a little wood-burning stove that never quite heated the corners of the room. But it was filled with music and laughter, with the soft hum of my mama's voice and the shuffle of my daddy's boots on the floor. They showed me what love looked like in the quiet moments, in the way my father tucked my mother's hair behind her ear when she stirred the pot, or how she left notes in his lunch pail when he worked late. I believed in that kind of love. I thought if you worked hard, stayed kind, and kept your heart open, life would give you good things in return. That's the kind of innocence I carried with me when I left home for teacher training in Lexington at 17. I thought the world was big but safe, full of people who meant well. That's where I met David. He was handsome in a quiet, sturdy kind of way, with deep-set eyes and a voice that was always just above a whisper. He sold hardware supplies for a living, but talked about opening his own business one day, a little store of his own. He told me he liked women who had brains who could hold their own, and when he looked at me, I felt seen in a way I hadn't before. He made me feel special, like I was the only woman in the world who mattered. He'd show up outside my dorm with flowers he couldn't afford, take me on walks by the river and ask me questions about my dreams, like they really meant something. And I believed him. I believed every word. After a year of courting, he proposed on the bench near the old bridge where we first kissed. My parents had their doubts, but I was so full of love and certainty that I didn't hear the hesitation in their voices. I thought love was enough to carry us through anything. So we got married in the little Baptist church I grew up in, my mama in tears, and my daddy walking me down the aisle with a grip so tight it almost felt like a warning. The first few months were good. We moved into a small apartment above a diner where the scent of bacon and coffee lingered all day. David worked, and I taught at the local elementary school. I made dinner. He watched the news, and we talked about saving for a house. It all seemed so normal, so right. But slowly things changed. It started with questions, little ones at first. Who was that man you smiled at in the grocery store? Why were you 5 minutes late getting home from school? Why are you wearing lipstick if you're not trying to impress someone? I thought he was just being protective, that maybe he had been hurt before and needed reassurance. Then came the rules. Don't wear skirts above the knee. Don't talk to other men. Don't go anywhere without telling me first. He said it was because he cared. He said it was love. But it didn't feel like love. It felt like shrinking. I stopped going out with friends. I stopped laughing as much. I started to check the mirror twice before leaving the house, not to see how I looked, but to make sure I looked the way he wanted me to. There weren't bruises, not yet. Just bruises on my spirit, on my sense of self. Little jabs that made me doubt what I remembered, what I felt. He'd say I was imagining things, that I was too sensitive, that it was all in my head. And I started to believe him. I told myself he was stressed, work was hard, money was tight. He didn't mean to sound so harsh. Maybe if I just loved him more, tried harder, gave him less reason to worry, things would go back to how they were in the beginning. But they didn't. The man who once traced my hand with his fingertips now gripped my wrist when he got upset. The one who used to kiss my forehead started slamming doors. And I found myself staring at the front door some nights, wondering what it would be like to just walk away and never come back. Still, I stayed. I stayed because I thought I could fix it. I stayed because I remembered the boy with flowers and promises. I stayed because no one had told me what to do when the man you love becomes a stranger in your own home. Looking back now, I know that the signs were there. They were quiet at first, but they were there. And I ignored them, wrapped in hope and a deep, desperate need to believe that love alone could save us. But love, real love, never asks you to become less than who you are. That was the beginning of my illusion unraveling, and it would only get worse from there. It was a rainy Thursday when everything fell apart. I had come home early from work, a busted pipe at the school, shutting down classes for the afternoon. I remember the smell of wet pavement, my shoes squeaking against the hallway tile, and the way my keys jingled louder than usual in my hand. I opened the door and heard laughter. Not just any laughter. A woman's laugh, soft but full, floated from the back of the apartment. I froze in the entryway. I knew that laugh. Laura, our neighbor, the one who brought me soup when I had the flu, the one who hugged me like a sister and called me brave. I walked toward the bedroom like I was sleepwalking. Every step felt heavy, like my legs no longer belonged to me. I pushed the door open slowly, just a crack. And there they were. In my bed. In the sheets I had washed 2 days ago. His hands were on her back, her fingers in his hair, their bodies tangled in the place I called safe. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I closed the door, turned, and walked back to the kitchen. My whole world collapsed silently. I sat at the table, hands on my lap, heart pounding so loudly it echoed in my ears. The laughter stopped. A door creaked. I heard her slip out the back like a coward. Then he came out, shirt half-buttoned, smug as if nothing had happened. When he saw me sitting there, his face shifted. I watched him do the math. I watched the mask drop. "What are you doing at home?" I asked calmly. He gave a half shrug. "The rain closed the school." I heard myself say it like a stranger. "I saw you, David." He didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A cold, sharp laugh that sliced straight through me. "So what are you going to do about it?" That's when I stood up. My knees were weak, but I stood anyway. I said the words I had rehearsed in my head 100 times, but never had the courage to say. "I'm done. I'm leaving." He stopped laughing. "You're not going anywhere." His voice dropped low. "You're my wife. You leave when I say you leave." I moved toward the hallway. He blocked it with his body, chest heaving, eyes dark and wild. "Let me pass, David." He shoved me backward with one hand. I hit the chair and stumbled. Still, I tried again. That's when the first slap came. Hard. open palm to the side of my face. My head snapped to the right. I tasted blood. My ears rang. The room tilted. Then came the second. A punch this time, straight to my ribs. I gasped and dropped to my knees. He grabbed my hair, yanked me up, and slammed me into the wall. The drywall cracked behind my shoulder. His spit hit my cheek as he screamed that I was nothing. Worthless, a burden. I curled up on the floor, arms around my head, trying to make myself smaller. He kicked me in the side. Once. Twice. I don't remember how many times. My body stopped registering pain. It just burned everywhere. I don't know how long it lasted. 5 minutes, 20, an hour. It felt endless. The sound of fists and curses and my own ragged breathing in my ears. He finally stopped when I stopped fighting back. I lay there, my face swelling, lip-split ribs screaming with every breath. He stood over me, panting like an animal. Then he said it. "If you ever try to leave again, I'll kill you." "You hear me?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. He kicked me once more in the side. Then he grabbed his coat and his wallet. "I'm going out. I want dinner ready when I get back. Fix your face. See, it's disgusting." And he left. I stayed on the floor, shaking, barely conscious. I thought I might die there. My fingers crawled toward the phone on the counter. I couldn't call the police. I didn't trust them to protect me. I couldn't call Mama. She'd collapse. I called my sister June. She picked up on the third ring. I couldn't say much, just her name. Then sobs. Then David hit me. Bad. Help. She was there in less than 20 minutes. I don't even remember how she got in. One moment I was alone, the next her arms were around me. "Oh my God, Evelyn. What did he do to you?" She and her husband carried me to the car, wrapped me in a blanket, and kept talking so I wouldn't pass out. We didn't go to the hospital. I begged her not to. I didn't want records yet. I didn't want questions. Just safety. Just silence. She took me to her home, helped me into bed, held my hand as I cried myself to sleep. The last thing I remember before blacking out was her voice, soft but fierce. "You're safe now. He's not touching you again." That night, something inside me broke, but something else began to wake up. A part of me that had been silent too long, a part that said no more. No more fear, no more silence, no more him. My father came for me the morning after June called him. He didn't ask questions. He didn't cry. He just wrapped me in his coat like I was still that little girl who scraped her knee on the porch steps and said, "Let's go home, baby." But home wasn't Kentucky anymore. The home had too many ghosts. We packed what little I had left, drove north in his old Ford, and ended up in Cincinnati. It wasn't planned. He just drove until he saw a city that looked big enough to hide in. We found a small upstairs unit in a faded yellow duplex near the west side. The kind of place where the walls were thin and the windows whistled when the wind blew. At first I hated it. The noise, the strangers, the sharp smell of fried food from the diner downstairs never quite left my clothes. I missed the open skies of home. I missed silence. But silence had nearly killed me, hadn't it? I got a job bussing tables at a corner breakfast joint. Nothing fancy. Just long shifts and short tips. My hands ached from wiping counters, and my back throbbed by noon. But I was working. I was earning. And that mattered. Every morning I walked past strangers who didn't know my name, didn't ask about the bruises I covered with scarves and makeup. And in a strange way that anonymity was comforting. Nobody looked at me with pity. Nobody looked at me at all. I was invisible, and it gave me space to breathe. At night, I lay awake and waited for the past to knock on the door. I imagined David breaking in, dragging me back, undoing everything. Some nights I swore I heard his voice in the hallway, but it was just old pipes and louder dreams. My father tried his best to keep me grounded. He'd cook dinner when I was too tired. He'd leave little notes by the coffee pot, reminding me I was safe. We didn't talk about what happened, not much, but I saw it in his eyes, the guilt, the rage, the helpless love of a man who would have burned the world down if it meant keeping his daughter whole. Little by little, the city began to feel like a second skin. The laundromat lady learned my name. The boy at the bus stop waved each morning. Even the barista down the block started remembering my order. Small things, but they chipped away at the walls I'd built around myself. I still flinched when someone raised their voice. I still kept the chain locked even during the day. But I also started to smile more, just a little. I started humming when I cleaned, just like Mama used to do. It wasn't happiness, not yet. But it was the beginning of something close. And beginnings, I was starting to learn, don't have to be loud to be real. Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they start with a rented room, a greasy apron, and the sound of your own breath saying I made it through one more day. I first noticed Ruby on a cold October morning, the kind where the wind cuts through your coat and the sidewalk smells like burnt leaves. She ran a little coffee stand at the corner of Vine and Liberty, nothing more than a cart and a stool, and a folding sign that read, "Fresh Brewed Hope." I walked by her every day on my way to work, always too nervous to stop, too guarded to make eye contact. But Ruby saw me anyway. She never pushed, just offered a gentle smile, a nod, sometimes a simple morning baby, like it was the most natural thing in the world. One morning I was running late, and she handed me a cup without asking what I wanted. Said, "You look like cinnamon today." I don't know what made me take it, but I did. And from that day on, I stopped walking past her. She asked me my name once. When I told her, she said it like it was something precious. Evelyn. That's a name that holds stories. I didn't tell her mine. Not right away. But she didn't ask again. Over time, we built something quiet between us. Not friendship, not yet, but something close. She had eyes that seemed to understand pain without needing the details. She never flinched at my silence. She never made me feel small for not laughing more. One rainy morning, I showed up early. Ruby handed me a towel, pointed to the second stool she'd added beside her cart, and said, "Sit a while." I did. She poured me coffee, didn't say a word for 5 whole minutes. Then she said, "You're good with people. Ever think about helping out here?" I was stunned. I hadn't worked face to face with anyone since I left David. I didn't trust myself to hold a full conversation, let alone serve strangers. But something in her tone made it feel safe. Like she believed in a version of me I hadn't seen in a long time. I started slow. Just weekends at first. Wiping counters, counting change, and learning how to smile at customers without shaking. Ruby was patient. When I froze, she stepped in. When I forgot something, she reminded me gently. And when I finally laughed at a customer's bad joke, she just gave me a wink and said, "See, told you it had come back." She never asked about the bruises that had long since faded, never questioned why I flinched when a man raised his voice down the block. She simply made space for me. And in that space, I started to feel real again. Working with her didn't just give me money. It gave me rhythm, routine, a reason to get out of bed that wasn't just survival. I started to walk taller, speak louder. I even bought a new dress, nothing fancy, just something that felt like possibility. Ruby never made a big deal out of it. But I think she knew. She saw me before I saw myself. And sometimes that's all it takes. One person, one small act of belief, one quiet kindness that says you're still here. You still matter. Keep going. It was a grey afternoon when the knock came. I was home alone, drying mugs from the stand, when I heard it firm and hesitant all at once. I opened the door, and there she was. His sister, the one I hadn't seen in years, the one who once held my veil straight at the altar and later watched me crawl out of her brother's life in pieces. She looked older, worn down. Her eyes met mine and dropped just as fast. She held a small duffel bag in one hand and a photograph in the other. I didn't ask her to come in, but she did anyway. Her hands shook. She didn't touch the coffee I poured. She just sat there quiet until she finally said, "Laura's gone." David, too. My chest tightened. I didn't ask how. I didn't care. They were both gone. Dead in a car crash, she said. Out near Dayton. I felt nothing at first. No joy, no relief, no sadness either. Just a blank wall inside me where their names used to echo. Then she slid the photo across the table. A little boy, about 4, curly brown hair, big wide eyes, the kind that look like they're always asking something even in silence. "This is Ben," she said. "He's theirs, and he has no one now." I stared at the picture like it might blink, like it might disappear. I couldn't find my voice. I couldn't even find a thought. Her words floated toward me through the fog. "CPS is overwhelmed. He's scared. He's not talking to anyone. But he knows your name. He asks for you." That made me flinch. I'd never met this child. I didn't know he existed. But apparently David talked about me, told Ben I was someone kind, someone strong. I almost laughed. The cruelty of it all. That he could destroy me, then turn my name into a bedtime story. She asked if I would take him, just for a while, just until things got sorted. I told her no. No hesitation. I stood up, voice shaking but firm. I said I couldn't be a mother to the child of the man who nearly killed me. I said I was done with that family, with their shadows, with their names. She nodded like she expected it. Stood up slowly, thanked me anyway, and left the photo on the table. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at that picture until the streetlights shut off. That face. So small, so full of nothing he asked for. He didn't choose who made him. He didn't ask to be born in pain. And yet here he was, 4 years old, alone in a world that didn't owe him anything good. I thought of Ruby, of what it meant to be seen when you're invisible. I thought of my mother, of the way she used to say, things come to us, not because we want them, but because we're meant to answer. I thought of how far I'd come just to feel whole again. And I wondered if maybe love could still grow in broken soil. The next morning I called her, told her to bring him. Just for a visit, I said. Just to see. He was smaller than I expected. His eyes never left the floor. He held onto a stuffed bear like it was the only thing left in the world that made sense. When I knelt to greet him, he didn't look at me. But he didn't pull away either. He didn't say much, just mumbled yes or no. I made him grilled cheese and soup. He ate half, then asked if he could lie down. I gave him the small guest room, still smelling faintly of lavender. When I peeked in an hour later, he was curled up like a comma, his bear tucked beneath his chin. Something inside me cracked open. It didn't happen overnight. I didn't suddenly feel like a mother, but I knew I couldn't send him back into a system that would chew him up. I couldn't let his story begin the way mine had almost ended. So I told her I'd keep him. No paperwork yet. Just a trial. Just time. But in my heart, I knew. He had my last name 2 months later. Ben Harris. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like someone who had survived for a reason. The early days with Ben were quiet. He didn't speak much. He followed me room to room like a shadow, never too close, never too far. I gave him space the way I wished someone had given me space once. We built a rhythm out of small routines: breakfast at 7, cartoons until 8. A walk to the corner market for bread we didn't need just to feel the sun on our faces. He was gentle, careful with his toys, careful with his words. Every time I reached for his hand, he'd flinch just a little, not enough to pull away, but enough to remind me that trust had to be earned. So I waited. I stayed present. I read to him at night, even when he looked bored. I hummed while folding laundry and left the bathroom light on just in case. One night he had a nightmare. I woke to the sound of soft crying down the hall. I rushed to his room, heart pounding like the old days. He sat on the edge of the bed, holding his bear so tight I thought it might split. I sat beside him, didn't speak, just wrapped my arm around his back and let him lean in. He didn't say what the dream was about. I didn't ask. That's how it went for months. Two people learning how to exist beside one another. No force, just time. Then one morning something changed. I was making eggs, humming the same old gospel tune Mama used to sing. Ben came into the kitchen, dragging his socks, rubbing his eyes. He climbed up on the stool, pointed to the plate and said, "Mom, can I have mine without pepper?" I froze. He didn't even notice. Just reached for the milk like it was the most natural thing in the world. He called me Mum, not Evelyn, not Ma'am, not Miss, just Mum. I turned away quickly so he wouldn't see the tears. My hands shook as I plated the eggs. I didn't correct him. I didn't say a word. I just placed the dish in front of him, kissed the top of his head and said, "Of course, sweetheart." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it cracked something open in me. All the pain, all the fear, all the voices that had told me I'd never be enough. In that one word, he gave me back something I hadn't even known I'd lost. Identity, purpose, love without strings. I didn't give birth to Ben. I didn't carry him in my body. But that morning, in the warmth of that tiny kitchen, he made me a mother. And I knew then that healing doesn't always come like a storm. Sometimes it arrives on a whisper. Sometimes it walks in wearing mismatched socks, asking for eggs without pepper. And sometimes it calls you Mum. Ben was 16 when the questions started. He'd always known I wasn't his birth mother. I had never kept that from him. But the details, the ones heavy with shadows, I had waited to share until I thought he could carry them. It began with a history project, family trees. He came home quiet, more distant than usual. That night he sat across from me at the kitchen table, fingers picking at the sleeve of his hoodie, and said he wanted to know the truth. I braced myself and told him what I knew. About David, about Laura, about the crash and what came before. He listened without a word, eyes locked on the tabletop. When I finished, he didn't look up. He asked me if they were bad people. I said yes, not with bitterness, but with honesty. He was quiet for a long time before he whispered something that broke my heart. "What if I'm like them?" I leaned forward. I told him no. That blood didn't carry character. That pain could be inherited, but cruelty couldn't. He looked at me, then eyes filled with something close to panic. He said he didn't trust himself anymore. Said sometimes when he got mad he felt something dark, something he didn't understand. I reached across the table and took his hand. I told him that darkness lives in all of us, but what matters is what we choose to do with it. I reminded him of every time he had been kind when he didn't have to be. Every time he helped someone without being asked. Every time he told me he loved me, even when I didn't feel like I'd earned it. You are not your father, I said. You are not your mother. You are you, and who you are is someone I would choose 1,000 times over. He cried then, not loudly, just a few tears like something inside him was finally loosening its grip. I held him, my 16-year-old boy who stood taller than me now, and I told him the truth I had learned the hard way. We are not made by the people who hurt us. We are made by the people who love us, and the choices we make when no one is watching. That night, I found his family tree project on the kitchen counter. He had written my name at the top, not in the parents section, but in the roots. Bold letters. Evelyn Harris, root. That was when I knew he finally understood. You are not your bloodline. You are the love you choose, the values you live by, the way you rise after falling. And if you carry anything forward, let it be that. Let it be light. Let it be true. Let it be your own. Telling this story was never something I planned. For a long time, I thought silence was strength, that moving on meant never looking back. But healing doesn't happen in the dark. It happens in the light, even when that light feels harsh. And sometimes the only way through is by speaking what once nearly broke you. I told this story because I know there's someone out there who feels trapped like I once did, who wakes up every morning wondering if today will be different and goes to bed each night knowing it won't. I want you to hear me clearly. There is a way out. There is life after pain, and you are not as alone as you think. I shared this not because I want pity, but because I found hope in places I never expected. In a woman with a coffee cart, in a boy who called me Mum, in the quiet resilience that builds when you choose love after violence, grace after betrayal. I've seen what happens when you decide that your past will not be your prison. So if you're listening and your heart is beating faster, if your eyes are filling with tears you didn't expect, maybe this was meant for you. Maybe this is your sign. Please don't stay silent. Talk to someone, ask for help, or just let someone know you're not okay. That's enough to start. And if this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, please comment, or share it. You never know who might need to hear it. One story can change a life. Maybe this one just did. Maybe yours will be next.